recording, so
Oh,
we
hey,
can
look at that.
we can share it with whoever wants to see it later.
I believe you now.
Thank you so much, Steve, for taking the time out to join us. Thanks to Scott, thanks to Eric, thanks to our audience members, thanks to everyone on Zoom. Everyone on Zoom, I would request that you please mute. Okay, so go ahead and do that. And the chat is open, so if you have anything you want to say, you can feel free to type into the chat while we are discussing stuff. So this discussion is going to be based on a framework of questions. So I'm going to be asking our three panelists some of the questions about their experiences with skate park development. We may stray from them. We're going to keep it loose. We're going to keep it light, and we'll try to have some time for Q&A at the end. Okay. So to introduce everybody, this is Scott Williams. He is a new transplant to our area. He came from Ithaca, where he grew up, and he used skating as a creative outlet in the face of childhood poverty. He's always been interested in giving back to the community, and he did a lot of work on a skate co-op in Ithaca, helped maintain an indoor skate park there, and provided funding and maintenance for the recent addition to Ithaca's historical skate park in their downtown. Most recently in our area, Scott's been doing a lot of work with our organization On Deck and doing a lot of video and photo of the local skate scene, kind of showcasing the local talent and also doing some fundraising for us. So it's been super awesome to have him on board, helping us sort of move forward with our own skate park project.
It's great to be here. I'm really glad I could participate in this.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
This is Erich Lehman. Erich is a Pennsylvania native, a longtime art collector, graphic designer, and overall creative. Erich has worked on a DIY curatorial mission in Rochester, where he shares his love of art to be a champion for public art in that city. And he runs a project called 1975, which he founded in 2008. It's been both a physical art gallery space as well as a virtual art space. It's still his brand. It's still who he is. It's what he lives by. Erich has been the curator or the co-curator and lead of a project called Wall Therapy, which is a mural project throughout the city of Rochester, and a skateboarder for over 35 years. He has been active in the skate scene and the art scene in Rochester ever since living there. And you moved there when?
93.
93. Okay, so probably lived in Rochester way longer than you lived in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. It's a little, yeah.
Erich has served on the Friends of Rock City Skate Park, like his t-shirt says, since 2010. And Erich was instrumental in getting that park built, which has been getting rave reviews. So really probably the best skate park in upstate New York. Maybe.
Don't make me say it. It's gnarly. It's
one of the biggest.
Come find out.
Yeah.
Come find out for yourself.
One of the biggest.
Open invite.
In 2012, Erich delivered a TED Talk speaking about the role that skateboarding played in shaping his life and helping him overcome some trauma and tragedy in his youth. So that TED Talk can be found online, and later on I'll post a YouTube to that if you want.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sweet. And finally, on Zoom, we've got Steve Rodriguez. Steve is known as the mayor of New York City skateboarding. Okay. Woo! Widely recognized as such. Steve started Fibro Skateboards in 1996, so that brand has been widely recognized worldwide and going strong for 25 years, which is amazing. And more recently, in the past couple decades, Steve has been involved with New York City's Parks Department and Department of Transportation, fundraising and designing over a dozen skate parks in New York City, including the Maloof Park, Astoria Park, LES Park, et cetera, et cetera. Steve is amazing at working with skaters and working with the suits in New York City. He kind of can handle both roles really well, and that's why he's so good at what he does. Steve sits on two boards, the board of directors for the Harold Hunter Foundation and the board of directors for USA Skateboarding, which is the national governing body for skateboarding in the Olympics for the United States. As if that's not enough, Steve has a career as a advertising executive, which he's been doing for probably most of your professional career, right? And that has led him into roles at some of the big agencies in the city, Saatchi and Saatchi, Kirschenbaum Bond, Special Anomaly, and most recently a company called EP & Co., where he is Senior Vice President and Head of Creative Talent and Culture. The cool thing is that in Steve's kind of creative professional life, it's led him to do consultation for brands such as Nike, Adidas, Volcom, and Red Bull to consult on sort of their lifestyle marketing efforts. So Steve has been around the block quite a bit, and it's really an honor to have him join us today. So
here, thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thank
awesome.
you. Yeah. Okay, so the first question, and I have sort of kind of general questions for all of you guys, and then I have Steve. I have a couple questions sort of specifically for you, because you have been involved in so many skate parks and not just one, right? Like so many in New York, over a dozen. But to start off, can you guys talk about what the design process was like for your skate parks in terms of how much it's relied on just one person or the community, and how that kind of went? Like, how did those designs for your parks sort of take shape?
I guess I'll start. Ithaca was mainly community influenced. Like I said earlier, it took about 10 years to get that going. The town threw in a small portion as far as like financial help towards the park, but the community raised about $210,000 out of the $300,000 that they needed. The rest was through like parks and like a urban renewal program that they were able to get money from, but ours was mainly fueled by the community, and it just took a bit longer. We got a lot of support from local businesses, local contractors, like excavating companies and of that sort. But yeah, ours was mainly fueled by the community.
Cool. How about yours?
So, we started, the original group started in like 2008. And as far as, it's kind of two questions. So I'm going to focus on the design side, but it's like we worked with like four different mayors, three different commissioners of parks and recs, starting the process over and over again.
Yeah.
But if we're talking about the actual design of the park, once the designer, like whoever was going to design the park, was chosen, it was a series of design charrettes. So they would kind of come up with some ideas based on consultation with the friends, and then we would kind of take those initial ideas, have like open to the public meeting, maps. I mean, I remember there was literally cut and paste obstacles that you'd move around on the space that you had to work with. They would take that back, turn it in. We did a couple of those, and then city decided what they wanted to do without us. I'm gonna get honest about some things. Yeah, we were involved in the process a lot, but then love everyone we work with there. But there was that crucial window where we kind of were like left in the dark as far as the advocacy group, and then kind of said, "Hey, this is what we're gonna do." And thankfully, we worked with the designer a lot on that process, Canton Russell, through Stantec, and then I forget where I have to remember where he went after that, but he was kind of someone who was like kind of shepherding it to make sure it was skatable, to make sure we could get a park that was worth 12 years of effort to finally get on the ground.
Okay. What about you, Steve? I mean, I'm sure it's different for every project, but
yeah. So I'd say it goes from one side of one end of the spectrum to the other, where you have best case scenario is a skate park like the LES skate park, and then you have, I don't want to say worst case scenario, but least favorable scenario where you have a park like Sergeant Doherty Park. A lot of people call it Cherry Park in Brooklyn, which actually people like, but a lot of people complain about the design. It really depends on the local officials and the person who's driving the process. And I would say a park like Cherry Park, a lot of the people that were involved, a lot of the officials said that, it's whatever the kids want, whatever they want. And, I'll say it, sometimes kids don't know what they want, or what they think they want might not necessarily be the best thing. So one prime example is the entire center of that park is completely empty because the very young kids said that they wanted to bring their flat bars and jump ramps to the skate park. And I get it, but they don't realize that you can build that into the skate park so that those things are there. So it's I guess the most difficult challenge about the design and getting it to a good place is explaining it to all the stakeholders, explaining how it works, explaining like that you're building something and you're designing something, actually not for right now, you're designing it for the future, for the next 10 to 15 years. And then the best case scenario is a park like LES where I had complete 100% control of that design and the build. Like whatever I put down on paper is what actually was built. And that is
yeah.
It's
very behind rare. A curtain.
No, it's very rare, but the reason how that was able to happen was because I applied for a grant and we got the money, and then I gave the city the skate park instead of giving them the money. You know what I mean? So there's a million different ways that this gets done, and you just need to know the most effective way at every roadblock.
Right.
You understand? Because there's always going to be something that comes up. Like you mentioned Stantec. I worked on them with a project for the Alexander Hamilton Park. A lot of people call it 181 Uptown. And that park took 13 years from my first meeting to when it was actually finished.
Yeah.
But there's certain things about that park that are horrible, but there's other things about that park, like the fact that it has lights 24/7 that are brighter than the lights at Yankee Stadium. Like that's amazing.
That's sick.
Yeah. You know what I mean? So there's certain, you just have to like be diligent in the design process, and like they say, the devil's in the details, all those little things, working with the community, just to try and get it to be as best as possible.
So in New York, it seems like there's skate parks kind of always popping up all over the place, right? Yeah. And where we live, it's a community-driven effort, right? Like a bunch of skaters have to get together and say, we want a skate park, or we want a new skate park. And then it's this very grassroots drive to get that done. Is it the same in the city? Is it like neighborhood kids getting together and doing this, or does it come from more elected officials?
It's both. It's all of the above, because, every kid that starts skating in New York City that gets really into it will DM me. How do I get a skate park in my area? And then I'll say, go to your community board meetings. It's a lot of work. I have basically, I tell them about the Tony Hawk Foundation called Skate Park Project, their guide that they have, how to speak to officials. I will, if I have time, I'll volunteer to go with them for that initial meeting to sort of kick it off. And then I'll sort of pull back and let them deal with it. But I'd say we've been fortunate in New York where, especially in Brooklyn and in the Bronx, the elected officials see that it's something that's wanted. So whenever there's an opportunity to either redo a park or do something, one of the first things they think is skate park. It's gotten a little bit challenging because they're dealing with vendors now that do a lot of cookie cutter parks, like a Spone Ranch or something like that.
Yep.
Which to me honestly sucks, because it's basically the same skate park in 5 different places, just in different pieces or put in a different way. It's making it more like it's not like a tennis court.
Right.
Like, for anybody on this call, when you ever speak to someone about skate parks, you have to think about a skate park. It's not a court. It's not like a basketball court or a tennis court or a volleyball court or a handball court, things that are always the same. It is more like a golf course, which
Right.
is based on, is site specific. That's the best way to convince people. And because they immediately understand that, you know, a golf course that's on hilly land would be different, you know what I mean, than one that's not, than one that's on the beach. So, you know, to go back to your question, it's been every single way, you know what I mean? Whether it's community driven, whether it's business driven, you know, for instance, the Maloof Park was a business decision and they were going to do a contest. So they wanted me to design a park for this contest for television. So that's how that came about. You know what I mean? So it's really just trying to find all of these allies across the spectrum in order to get skate parks built. You know.
Yep.
Yeah.
As far as you guys know, how did the bid process go? And by that, I mean like finding contractors to design and build parks. Like, how's that been?
Well, luckily at Ithaca, we already had the initial park there. We weren't renewing the park. We were just adding on to the old one. So we would just use the same people that we had used before. Ithaca is really good about sustainability and promoting local businesses and stuff like that. So they did go that route. But it was a little bit more different of a scenario because we were just adding on onto another already existing park.
Right.
So when the bids went out, because it was a city park, and you know, which was always our goal, it was like we didn't want it to be private. We wanted it to be like run by the city, to be like you said, like a tennis court, like any other courts run by the city,
Located in the city.
but located downtown, central downtown. Excuse me. So it had to follow your like the general bidding as if it was any other project done by the city. Fortunately, you know, like I said, because the Friends, which is really just this advocacy group, we just kept harping on the fact, like for one version of the process, we were involved in it. Another one, like the final version, we weren't directly, but we you know, were the nagging gnat in the ear saying, like, you need to make sure whoever is part of this process knows how to actually build a skate park. You can't get someone who just knows how to build a house or foundations or whatever, like, and just pour general concrete. You need to get someone with skate park experience. Please avoid these people if possible, regardless of the bid. And I think it was like, you know, go to a lowest bidder type of scenario.
Yeah.
Fortunately we lucked out. You know, we got like some of the smoothest concrete I've ever rolled on. But it was scary. You know, it's a scary process. Like, we have no control.
You're just handing this baby.
Yeah, you're like, pretty please,
Here,
please
make it good.
Yeah,
make it good.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just pretty much handled like a normal city construction contract.
Yeah, most of the projects that I've been involved with, besides LES, are part of larger projects. So they get this big general contractor, and then they're the ones that are securing the bid and you know, winning the bid. And then it's honestly kind of a crapshoot as far as who they hire to do the skate park. But we try and build in, especially with the DOT, to have like approved vendors. Like, these are people like California skate parks, like something like that, where we know that these guys will do it right. And it's actually pretty, for the DOT, it's easy to do that, because in consulting for them, they just ask and then it's written and then it's kind of like the rule. But for Parks Department, it's kind of different. as far as, you know, and there's a lot of sketchy stuff out there that you have to be very aware of, because someone could lend their name to someone. Like I've heard so many times, oh, well, they have someone from Grindline who's going to oversee it, right? And then I would go to the site, and it's someone that was on a crew of a one job for Grindline 10 years ago doing nothing, and that's how they got in. So you need to be really diligent every step of the way, because, you know, at the end of the day, I don't want to say contractors are trying to cut corners, but they're definitely trying to save money any way they can, because it's a set amount of money that they're going to get. So if they could do it a little bit cheaper, you know, and sacrifice a little bit of quality or something like that, you just need to be really aware. So it's definitely.
I want to jump on something too, because while you were talking, it reminded me that with our bids, it was actually broken out, and hopefully I'm not misspeaking, you know, explaining it correctly, but it was actually broken out that there would be, like you said, there was a larger overall construction person group, and then they had to, you know, again, list who it was. And that actually enabled us to kind of like help flag, like, let's avoid these people, and let's go with this. And then when it came down to it, like in our case of the final park, we did actually have real Grand Lake people show up, including a guy who's from Rochester who travels with Grindline. So it's kind of like hometown, like input right into it. But they did all the transitions. And then the master company, or the main company, did all the flat.
Yeah.
So they actually broke it up into what was being poured and who controlled like building which part.
That's actually a New York State rule.
Oh, is it?
Where the specialty work can be done by someone like a Grindline, or shotcrete, but then the flats have to be done at a prevailing wage by someone local.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah, it was the local. The local.
So it's again. So you guys know this is it's super, super complicated.
Yeah.
That to do this, you know, this whole process is very complicated. But you just need to, you know, you got to make sure. If you think about, there's a park, Thomas Jefferson Skatepark. It's on like 102nd Street on the east side in Harlem. The flats of the park are broom finished, which is it's like a sidewalk, basically. But to the contractor, you know, all the other pieces are fine, but the flats were, and it's so unacceptable. But, you know what I mean? So you have to really be diligent and every step of the way.
Yeah.
It's like having really, really nice ramps and then asphalt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Better.
Yeah, and skate park companies understand the nuances of things, like, you know, it's not going to work if the expansion crack is an inch wide or an inch and a half wide. Like, they get skateboarding, and you know, in our park we had a landscape company come in and do a bid for like design. You know, they weren't a skate park company at all, and we were just like, yeah, no way.
You bring up a great point with expansion joints. You know, most of the best skate parks, even in places like Rochester, you don't put in the huge expansion joints on the flats. You just do either saw cuts or something like that. And yes, the concrete is going to crack, but you know, if you told that to someone who works for the city or someone that lays concrete for the city, they're going to be like, no, that's completely wrong. But that's just how it is in a skate park.
Yeah.
You know, because it's not an automobile going over it. It's a skateboard. It's
tiny wheels.
individual. So it's very hard, because so many of the individuals in construction are saying like, no, these are the rules. This is how it has to be done. Right. But they have to realize this is something they've never dealt with before. You know what I mean? So it is different. And unfortunately, there isn't like a book of rules for this stuff that they can follow. So they don't want to be held liable. Oh, if I don't put these expansion joints, it's going to crack. and then they're going to come back to me saying, why is the skate park cracking? But
Right.
it's okay for a skate park to have cracking because it's superficial and it's, it's okay.
Yeah, and cracks are easy to patch. It's easy. It's easier to do that than to redo an expansion joint. That's already too thick. So I'm curious about your guys' experience with the business community in skate parks, and have you had any pushback from like local businesses saying like, no, we don't believe you need a skate park, or we don't want a skate park?
I'll jump first. That's right.
Yeah, go for it.
We actually had I'd say a pretty shockingly supportive business community who got it. Like, and the park's been open since like it opened in like November, and like every business around there has seen like skyrocketing business. Like which is what we sold along that process. Like, bring in a park, people are going to buy, they're going to spend, they're going to eat. They're going to do the other things that are near here, and even like neighborhood association that's right near the park, like they're super supportive, and our partners now. It's like with the friends and with the city on this. So. We also are in like the weirdest location ever in the city. Like, people drive by, like, where do we park for this thing? Because it's literally under a bridge on the other side of like the highway entrance, next to the river, and it's there's places nearby, but you have to kind of know where to go. And we by the way have that stuff on the site, like maps of where to park. Overall, like. We had more trouble, I think, with convincing the government of Rochester as opposed to the businesses, because a lot of businesses end up donating stuff. They, there are, anything like Sage Ruddy, which reals are there. They one of their members or employees like lost her son in skateboarding. He was skateboarding in the street. His name is Kieran Matthews. He was 14. And so she's always been a huge advocate for getting this. And by extension, Sage Ruddy's been a huge advocate. They've donated, I believe it's about $50,000 towards the park and in our efforts as well. So it's, I'd say for us, it was businesses were into it. If it was inside a neighborhood, it might have been different.
Yeah.
But given our location, we actually had really good support like this whole time. So
Sweet. Yep. Ours was actually very similar to that, and it was closer. It was actually right on the border between a neighborhood and Strip Mall USA. So it was like we had like a Texas Roadhouse right next to us, and no joke, when we were out there cleaning up the park and stuff, the manager of the Texas Roadhouse would bring us out little like grilled cheese bites. He'd be like, here you go, guys.
Dude,
like, thanks, keep it up,
Awesome.
So we got a lot of support from a lot of the local businesses, especially, like the smaller restaurants and stuff. They loved it. They would post up any type of kind of like artwork and try and sell it, and whatever they made that would go towards the skate park. We would get a lot of support from many businesses, and even the people in the neighborhood right next door seemed like they were actually more observant of the fact that the old park that we had, the skateboarders like had decreased because the old park wasn't maintained, and we're striving for something new.
Right.
And so as far as the community went, I feel like it was we did get a lot of support from businesses.
Sure.
For sure.
Yeah. What about you, Steve?
Everything from not wanting it to wanting it, but I'd say the most important thing for any project is being proactive and explaining to the businesses in the area the benefits of having a skate park, showing them facts,
Right.
showing them good examples of how this helps the community, not only, in so many different ways, letting them know, oh, this will drive business because people are going to be around here. The area will be safer because there'll actually be people around more often, things like that. So, you know, I'd say as skateboarding becomes more popular, there are less people at community board meetings that are pushing against skateboarding.
Right.
It used to be like, you know, the first 15 people would be against it. Now there's maybe one person, and their reasoning is just so out of date and so not valid. That just immediately, you know what I mean? Because again, it's mainstream. There's if you look at any skate park, you know, there's kids as young as like 4 years old. So you got parents there, you know, that changes the dynamic. There's, you know, supervision. It's a different time, and I think it's great. And I think businesses see that, and I think businesses have matured as well, and they're aware of skateboarding.
Right.
You know, they're aware. They see it on TV. Like, you know, anyone, you know, it's so mainstream that they're aware that this is something that is quote unquote normal and okay. Whereas before it was something when there weren't skate parks, they would see groups of kids hanging out and they would just say like, oh, something bad's going on there.
And they may have been right. I mean, you know, come on.
Because they didn't know, you know what I mean? So, yeah, but I don't get that much pushback on the projects I work on. And even, you know, when I help outside of New York City consulting on some projects, even internationally, it's usually embraced. Skate parks are usually embraced.
Right.
That's amazing, because I mean, if you had said that 25, 30 years ago, you'd be like, what?
Yeah.
You know what I mean, that would,
even 10 years ago.
Well, that's what I was gonna say is like with friends, like that first half of our 12 years of working is just advocacy of trying to get people to understand that we're not juvenile delinquents. We're like, you know, at that point, we're middle-aged delinquents now, you know, but we're like, you know, our group was like, we're like small business owners and we're taxpayers, and we've got, you know, skaters who are, you know, in school boards, you know, high up in this, in education. And it was, a good 5, 6, 7 years of just straight up education and advocacy until people even understood like skateboarding's okay. Like it's a good thing. Like, you know, and like with Rochester too, you know, where we always had a big push, like skateboarding, BMX, like all like wheel-based sports. There is an insane resurgence of like roller skaters. Like we have a shop for roller skating now, and like there's so many people doing that at the park. So we just went like, we started using the term like wheel-friendly plaza, you know, and like progression-oriented sports, you know, like these type of things to try and like take control of the language, so that they stop thinking about it like skateboarding. It's kind of like graffiti, right? Graffiti is vandalism, right? Skateboarding is vandalism and is destruction. But you're like progression-oriented sports and a wheel-friendly plaza, and it just became friendlier. And, you know, alongside of just like society being like, oh, we get it now.
I think it's really interesting in Ithaca because when they did make the addition, it actually brought more business to the local businesses right in that area. There was actually, no joke, a Walgreens right next to the old skate park that was very close to going under. And then they built that new addition, and now it's totally packed. There's more space, so BMXers can do their thing and skaters can do their thing. And the only place that you can go get a Gatorade is the Walgreens. So a lot of the kids started just skating or biking over to the Walgreens, and like I've personally been told by like one of the clerks, like, you guys are bringing in so much business to us, and we really appreciate it. So
it's amazing.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about this idea of like wheel-friendly parks versus just skate parks? Because this is our thing, right? Like skateboarding is ours. We design the skate parks, and yet once we're done creating a skate park, in come the scooters, in come the bikers. In the 90s, in came the rollerbladers, etc. You know, and I think it's something that we have to learn to live with, right?
Yep.
But I'm curious about like what your thoughts are in terms of like it's designed for us by us, but then these other elements come in. You know,
We had like many BMXers come into the area, and they'd say, you know, it's not exactly the most BMX friendly park.
Right.
However, I do have to admit it's really nice to have all this space. So that way the skateboarders can kind of do their thing over there and we can do our thing over here. So I think the biggest thing is space. And, you know, with space comes additions to things that would cater to a BMXer or to someone that rides a scooter or roller skates. You know, I think that expansion is probably really beneficial in that way.
sure.
Yeah. I mean, our board, we've got, you know, an inline guy, we've got BMX guys, we've got, you know, skaters, talking to, you know, some folks who from the roller skating community. You know, I kind of like, I personally am just like, I don't care what it takes. Call it whatever you want. As long as I get the park built and I can ride it, I do not care.
Yeah.
You know, and I think a lot of us got to that point where we're like, whatever you want to call it, just build it so we can ride it and like, and it's rideable for as many people as possible.
Exactly.
But I think it also builds, you know, like if and CB, it's like, if it's this, then you only have this narrow band of people advocating for it. If you open it up and be like, and I think Rochester has like my roommates were almost always BMXers, not skaters.
Yeah,
you know, it's like we always had the mix. We always had the mix up there. So that type of stigma, I think, wasn't as big as like you go to California and they're just at war with each other.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're just like, look, if we're all in this together, we will be that much quicker to get it.
Exactly.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead, Charlie.
Also, the more kids you have, you know, the more sports you have, the more people are using the park, and the more crowded it gets, the more like the problem fixes itself, because then people want to expand the park, and skateboarding seems to be the most popular and always steady, always popular all the time. And I feel like the other ones, they come in, they go out, like you mentioned, rollerbladers or inline skaters.
Yeah, dude,
I haven't seen them
crew up
for
there.
years, you know.
They're all in Rochester and they're crazy. They're awesome. Like it's nuts.
We have
but they may go out next year, you know. You know, they might lose.
Well, they've, at least in Rochester, it's like they've kind of become what we used to be as skaters in the like late 90s. You know, like everyone's like looking down, but they're like these almost like Sasquatch. You would see these these crews, and I was like, this is awesome. I don't care. Like, this is so rad. Like, because you love that activity so much, you do not care how cool it is or how accepted it is socially. Like, and that, I mean, that's like the punkest thing. That's like, I know why, part of why I think a bunch of us older folks started skateboarding. We're like the outcasts, whatever. It's like, and I think even scooters, like if you look where that is, like, look, you're never going to catch me on a scooter, but I've been watching these dudes and they're guys and girls, and I'm like, they're gnarly. All right, man. Like, who cares? They're riding, they're ripping.
Yeah.
And they don't care what you think about them. And they're ripping this park just like the skaters and the BMXers. And you're like, that's awesome.
Yeah.
We're in, man. Like, let's do it.
It's for Ithaca, it was nice because now that there's enough space for the BMXers and the skateboarders to hang out, then they start talking to each other, and next thing you know, they're buddies.
Yeah,
it's like everyone's friends. You know what I mean? So that was the nice part. But I agree with you, Charlie. I think that the more people you get in there, like for example, the park here in Saratoga, almost every time I go there, there is someone at the skate park. However, it is not the same with many of the baseball fields or the football field that's there. Which is funny.
Dude, people are at Rochester Park. It's the hours are 7 to 10. There are people there at 7 a.m. and there are people there at 10 a.m. and it's like old guy sessions, young kids, young guys. It's like everyone's kind of found their niche. But like the minute that park's open, they're there and they're riding, and that's what we did. Like, that's what we built. And if you look at even some of the photos from like the opening week, Like there's a lot of drone shots, and you're like, there again, it's November COVID when everything was exploding. So you have this. We had the news of like, awesome, the park is open. We had awesome press for like 12 hours, and then literally the next day is like COVID hotspot. And you're like, come on, give us 24 hours. It's been 12 years.
Let us enjoy
Give
it.
us a day, man. Like,
Yeah.
get out. But, you know, and we worked around it, and it's kind of stabilized now that hours are set and you can be out and kind of safe.
Cool.
But yeah, there's just, like I said, there's always people there. And it's, you know, it just showed the city, again, that there was a demand. Like, I will be 100% honest. When I saw the crowds opening weekend, I'm just like, where the hell did all these people come from? Like, I was like, there are this many people still skate, and and you had the whole breath of age. Where I was like, blew my mind. It's like all these people who are riding whatever they're riding, and it's just like, yeah, a couple hundred people.
Yeah.
And it said the city's like, we got to finish phase 2. And like are rearranging what they were gonna do to finish the rideable portion. Like they had like a 3-phase project for it, and they're like, you know what? The next phase is just going to be the rest of the rideable surface.
Yeah.
And it's also shown like, hey, maybe we should, like, we were part of our advocacy was like, let's, like, you don't have to have the mega park at every place, but like, you've got all these rec centers around the city.
Yeah.
We're serving the residents of downtown Rochester. Like that is our primary goal.
Yeah.
Just start putting, like, it can be a flat, I think like what Steve was saying, like it could be a small place with a flat bar and a quarter pipe or something. Like it doesn't have to be gnarly, but it just has to be something that's for us, like it's safe. It's not going to take people out of the streets, which people, like some people think it's going to do, but it's like, no, it gives them somewhere safe. Like, especially young kids who are just learning it. Let's keep expanding on that.
Yeah.
I'll just add to that. That's where the importance of design comes in.
Yeah.
Because you have to realize, regardless of whether this is a skate park or whatever it is, that everybody's going to use it.
Yeah.
And there's certain things you can do in design that separate certain areas of the park. Because if you guys know, if you made ledges that are 10 inches and lower, bikers aren't going to use them.
Yeah.
No.
You know what I mean? Yep. And if you make a ramp that has a steep transition, they won't use them. So you have to like incorporate that into your design so that there are zones, and that there's a big problem with a lot of skate parks is there's not enough space in between obstacles. And as you know, with a bicycle, they go very fast. And when they fall, they're in the way. It's all these like little design cues that you have to like learn and think about to make the park, to make it not only flow right, but to make it flow for every, wheeled
discipline.
Also
the disciplines.
have like variety, amongst it. Yeah.
In the city, there's so many skaters, but I don't get the feeling there's a ton of BMXers. Do you find that BMXers are using the parks down there?
They do. I mean, not as much, because I feel like right now what is popular with BMX is more street riding only. And it's kind of like, it's like skating. Like when all the parks started popping up in New York City, everybody would chill in the parks. Then there was sort of like this exodus where people are like, no, I got to get back to street skating. Now it's like everything. I feel like BMX is at that point right now where it's mostly concentrated out in the streets and not in the parks,
Yeah, I mean, when you're collecting photos and video, anything is way more aesthetically pleasing in the street versus in a park. It just looks 100 times better. So
it does, but I'll tell you that perception has changed.
I think so.
Where many people will do entire parts in parks. And it's okay now. It's showcasing your skill.
It's generational, right? Like I think a couple people here, and you and me and Benj, like we're that older, like you can't be in a park, and the kids who are growing up in the parks, they just don't care. And they're not like the stuff they're doing is so sick. Like Who cares?
I
You
see
have
a
to-
park more as like a segue to the street.
Right.
So like you go start
Practice
at a
it,
park
get
and
it
you
down.
practice it and you get it down and then you take that out to the street because that's like the stage. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
how your performance is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More at that still leads back to design,
Right.
where you can build things in skate parks that mimic the street so much that it is a legit spot. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah.
If you look at Alexander Hamilton, like any of those at 181 Uptown,
Mhm.
if any of those parts of that skate park were in the street, it would be a legit spot.
Yeah.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you can film there, and it is like a legit spot. You know.
Yeah.
To go back on what you were saying about them making entire films at skate parks, I actually just recently saw that Harbor City in LA just upgraded their skate park there. And I'm like, Nike SB did a video there, the Barracks did a video there, a bunch of people were doing full videos like with a bunch of pro skaters at this new park. And I just thought that was interesting.
So it's changing.
Yeah. Yep.
Interesting. So, what about fundraising? This is like always the biggest obstacle, I think, because we've got community buy-in, we've got business buy-in, but then there's the price tag, right? So like, what have you guys done to fundraise?
Anything and everything.
Bend over backwards.
Yeah.
Bend over forward.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean,
I think the big thing that had helped us were the businesses for sure.
Yeah.
Convincing a local business, like we got a lot of help from Andrew Douglas, the owner of Homegrown Skate Shop. Luckily, we had a skate shop in town. That really, really helped us kind of streamline things. But yeah, as far as a lot of the small restaurants and stuff, they would do the artwork thing. They would do specials and like a certain percentage of whatever their profit was, they'd put towards the park. It was a variety of things, like publicizing. Local talent was a big one too. That's why I really enjoyed starting doing that here. So, but yeah.
so, oh no, I'm just,
I thought
I'm
you were
just sitting
gonna-
up. No, I'm just
okay.
sitting up.
Yeah, it was anything you could possibly do, really.
Yeah.
It's like anytime. I think I started to annoy my friends. That's
Oh,
how
God.
often it was
Oh yeah, no.
like, guys, you should really tell your friends. Like, I'm telling you, we got to get this new section going.
yeah, and
Your strategy with fundraising needs to literally be at every level, whether it's, at the super local individual level where it's skateboarders going out door to door, then stepping it up, getting businesses involved, and maybe it's some of the larger businesses in town. Like who are these big corporations that might be in your town? Then people like Tony Hawk Foundation, now called the Skate Park Project. You really just need to like kind of set up on the wall, have like, how are we going to do this? Like, what is every potential avenue for fundraising? From buying a brick at the skate park with your name on it to having a huge corporate sponsor. Like, I remember when I was helping in Burlington, Vermont, Ben and Jerry's paid for that park. You know what I mean? It was like, there's always someone, and especially now, fast forward 20 years or whatever, there might most likely be someone working in a corporate environment that used to skateboard. And that will maybe say like, oh, we should give to this, because there's a lot of brands and businesses have specific programs where they give back. We give back X amount of dollars per year and get those dollars. You know what I mean? And then at the same time, make it worth their while by potentially, doing something, whether it's signage or whether it's doing an event there or, PR or whatever it is. You just need to really look at every single level from individual donors to huge corporations like a Pepsi or Coke or something like that.
Yeah, I mean everything that Steve said, and it's a lot of it was just like about relationships, and working as hard as you can. We always joked. The city was like, "You got to raise all the money," and we're like, "We're broke middle class skateboarders. We don't know rich people. like come on. I hate to break this to you. We none of us if we had the deep pockets, we would have already built this.
Yeah.
So it that was always a battle. But sometimes it takes just like making that relationship, that one connection, to get the buy-in, and then it's okay for other people then to buy in. Said like Tony Hawk Foundation, that they gave us initial 10 grand years ago, and we were like on the border of like, look, it's been a decade. You're the last outstanding people that we haven't built a park. You're our failure, And we got it. Thankfully, it all came together, and then they end up partnering with like the Ralph G. Wilson Foundation out of Buffalo, and that foundation, especially in Western New York, has been really investing in a lot of parks. He was like owner of Buffalo Bills. Maybe misspeaking, but I'm pretty sure he's owner of Buffalo Bills. And all this money was going towards other sports, like parks that were for other sports. And that's actually, one of the awesome trickle down effects that actually worked is like once Rochester got that park built, all these local towns around us were like, oh, we should have a park too. And a bunch of them have won grants from the Ralph G. Wilson Foundation and Skatepark Project. And it's all of a sudden, I think in the next year or so, you're going to see an explosion of nice, proper parks blowing up around Rochester. Which is awesome. And then there's 3 amazing parks out in Buffalo too. But just to talk about what else we do with fundraising, it was art shows. It's the same thing, the collaborations with restaurants, it's special events, it's dance parties, it's whatever it took to we had a lot of small businesses that would maybe they made a shirt, or maybe they had a special event and the proceeds go to us. It's relationships, and trying to foster and maintain those as you go through the years. And also, especially when you're trying to get a skatepark built, we're like, this may not happen next year, and trying to explain that to the people you're working with. Cause I know friends faced blowback at one point where they're like, why isn't this park built? Where'd the money go? We're like, dude, we haven't raised enough. There's no money to be raised. Trying to be open and transparent and communicative about how whatever money we are raising, where is it going? What is it doing? And how you go. But, it's a process.
Searching every avenue you possibly could. We got lucky too because Ithaca had an urban renewal program, and we were able to get some funding through that. I think it was like $40,000 from that.
That's huge.
The New York State Parks, I think we were able to also get funding from. But it's exactly like I said, just every avenue.
You just have to knock down every door and just be the gnat in the air, be annoyingly persistent with a smile. Just be like, pretty please, we're not going away. Skateboarders are cockroaches. We are not going away.
Also, just having a real authentic story to tie it all together really helps from a strategy standpoint.
Absolutely.
Because if you just go to someone with your hand out, it's so much better if there's a story that has a PR push behind it, and it's real stories about, you know what I mean? That stuff really, really helps, and it helps people. It opens up a lot of wallets. You know what I mean? There's a real authentic story for the community, and these things are exactly that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's great. So we're hinging on about an hour here, and I want to kind of open it up. So Belinda, is there anybody in the chat that has any questions or comments?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
How about you guys?
So to everyone who's on Zoom, now's your chance to post something in the chat. If there's anything you want to say, anything you want to ask about, now's your chance. In the meantime, I'll ask any of our audience members, is there anybody who wants to make a comment? Yeah.
Oh, when the bowl was made, I seen that there's like a bunch of shops on there sponsored by.
Yep.
Like companies like Stewart's could even do that, right?
Yeah. So Thomas is making the point that one of the ways that businesses can get recognized for donations is like having their logo stamped in some concrete or that kind of thing. And that's something that I think a lot of skate parks have done. Have you guys done stuff like that?
Yeah, and we're with this initial build because our park is not finished.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's phase 1 was what is there now. Phase 2 is the rest underneath the bridge, and then phase 3 is all the stuff that makes it pretty.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so we're still working through how we're going to be recognizing the folks who did donate big dollars over the years. But it's cool. We have awesome connections with the people at the Department of Recreation and Youth Services, from the commissioner down to director of recreation, who are partners. And it is, like I said, it's tough having had that turnover and just being willing and down to keep fostering those relationships and staying on top of it.
Yep.
If you're in that process, keep records, keep written records, keep spreadsheets. It's the horrible, ugly, gross part of this. If you're like in an advocacy group, but stuff changes and you have rollover, you have turnover both in your group and in the city or whatever your municipality you're working with. So keep the receipts. Like you need to have that to keep those conversations going.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
We didn't really have much as far as advertising went in Ithaca. Like I said, it was kind of right near a lot of commercial spaces. So, I mean, that was enough. You can just see what's going on right from the skate park. There wasn't anything stamped anywhere. However, I do recall at the rec park here, I saw on one of the baseball fields, they had a bunch of like banners of advertisers. And I thought that would be a really good route to take.
Totally. Yeah, totally.
We can't do that because we're on DOT land.
Oh,
you can't advertise on DOT. So that's part of our challenge.
State land.
Yeah, because it's state, and there's regulations about advertising visible from the road.
Right.
So we're trying to figure out what we can do.
Oh, wow.
So
Is that
because we looked at it like
a Rochester thing?
No, that's DOT because our park, even though it's a city park, is on Department of Transportation land, like state land, underneath the bridges. So it's that complicated our process too. Yep. So we're like, like all the different hoops.
We just want to be the trolls under the bridge.
We are absolutely the trolls under the bridge, and we're okay. That's fine. It's well lit.
Yeah,
we're good.
Awesome.
I have a suggestion I just thought of. You know how skate parks are starting to put shade sails up for parents and sometimes for skaters too. You could actually put a logo or a name of a business on those shade sails, and sell that.
Yeah.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, like I said, it's really just restricted by where the park is, like where that land is, and then what you have to deal with. Like I said, it's all the stuff you never think about because we've just been like, get the concrete in the ground.
Let me skate.
Please. Like, I remember when we're like, dude, we're going to have this park built by the time we're 40. I'm like, all right, I'm 46 now. I was 45 when the park was finished. I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to be ripping it the way I thought I was going to. But yeah, so you're so focused on that. And then you're like, oh my God, there's all these other things we got to think about that. And a lot of them are out of your control unless you are, the man, you're the city, you're the whatever. So, but yeah, just being open and flexible and trying to figure out, because there's so many cool things that could be done. Like, we're looking at, I think for it here, some kind of bench or something, like something to be dedicated to him, working with the city, and same thing with tiles, some kind of whether it's a patio area or something where we can have stamped tiles or some kind of signage that there's like a sliver, I think, of city property. We're like, all right, maybe we can do it on that bit. Yeah. So, but yeah, just being creative and keeping your mind open.
Belinda, do we have anything in the chat?
No, but I wanted to add to that the city of Saratoga has been really open just putting signage up and making sure that people know what's going on. The skate park is very small there, so all the conversation about like expansion, we would have to, because it's also on school district property, we would have to move somewhere else, or we would have to make a new skate park somewhere
Right.
else. Which has been a conversation.
Make a
that
new
we've
one.
had.
Make a
But
new
we
one.
also, but we want to start with this very like historically
Right.
known skate park, get this to a point where it can have the respect it deserves, and then we can expand up, or someone
Right.
else. I say we as a
Community.
Saratoga group or skating group could, then have a conversation about something in the future. But the city has been very supportive of us making sure that we keep track of who we're in touch with, what we're doing, where we're placing it so people can see it. And they also, a lot of people think the skate park's an eyesore. So one of the things we've been really, really cautious of with the design and everything is to make sure that when people see it from the outside, they're just not seeing graffiti all over the walls. We're going to create it so that it's visibly pleasing as well, aesthetically, so that we are trying to be part of the community of the skate park and not just the eyesore in the middle of the skate park. And at some point, hopefully, we'll get lights like the rest of the park too.
Yeah.
Right.
So we'll see how that works.
I think a great solution to having it being an eyesore is maybe by upgrading it. But
It is an eyesore.
Also, another thing that we did at Ithaca, because we'd get a lot of graffiti and people would say stuff about it, is
Street art.
part of one of the things I did was we would just go through and paint over it. Like every couple of months, we'd go through and we'd just paint blue over it. And that was it. It was like people would do it again and it would be a thing and it's constant, but it kept it clean looking and not an eyesore. It's a very simple thing, especially with concrete. It didn't seem like it made a big difference in your skateboarding.
Well, I think it's important for things like that to happen too, because it gives skaters ownership of their park, right?
Yeah.
Instead of that attitude of like, this is something that was built for me by somebody else.
Yeah.
When you do things like that, it makes them feel attached to it. It makes them care about it as a place that they own rather than just a place they go and ride their skateboard.
I think that it was more towards like in Ithaca specifically, it was more towards like vulgar things.
Sure.
That were,
Yeah.
Because many parents bring their children and stuff like
there's
that.
a giant penis on
Yeah.
the bowl. Yeah, of course.
Told you not to paint that.
Exactly. Yep.
What's that?
Charlie and I painted over a bunch of penises a while back, like maybe 6 years ago.
Yeah. Thank you.
If I can add to it also, there are ways of creating opportunities for those community members who want to share their artwork or their tagging or something else in the skate park as well, in a way that lets them own it without censoring them.
Yeah.
Or painting over them or causing
Yeah.
them. You paint over it, they're just going to come back, right?
Right.
So you have to create some kind of opportunity within the skate park as well for them to also have a voice. So
Maybe-
that's
and-
another way of also recognizing people regardless.
Maybe that would lead to investment or a thought of investment into some type of studio or space that these kids could actually do their thing, and just have a free open space. But
There's I don't.
One sec, Steve. What was that, bud? Sorry.
I was going to say, would they rather have it in a gated community in a pool, or would they rather have it on like the stupid Commons Park? It's going to happen.
It's
Yeah.
gonna happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Steve.
Steve.
Yeah, so if you guys look at the example at Venice Beach, so there used to be the pit where everybody skated and everybody did graffiti. But what they did when they built the new skate park, they have the skate park, it's graffiti free, and then there's these walls that exist near the skate park where you're allowed to do graffiti.
Right.
And people, it's like on a rotating basis. And that does give them the platform to do what they want to do. And it's not like it's some crazy expensive walls that they have to put up. You know what I mean? They just put up a couple walls, and then all the graffiti artists concentrate there, leave the park alone for the most part. I know you can't always solve everything, but it has worked in many places.
Yeah. I mean, we're so even though I'm on the board, I also do this thing, wall therapy. And right now I kind of like stepped out of that role, like with the board for this certain project where I'm working with the city to try and install like the community done murals and graffiti down there. Our biggest challenge right now is insurance, because like while therapy nonprofit's so small and the DOT demands for insurance are so large, $25,000 large, where I'm like, that's my whole contract, to paint. And I want to get money into the hands of artists to paint there, like local based artists. So we're working on that to try and solve stuff, because it's under a bridge. It would bring so much color, and like Rochester's got like insane talent, like homegrown talent. And there is some like vandalism graffiti down there, and we're like, or we could have these awesome people. And the great part is like, we are working with the city. They're like super invested in trying to get that to happen. We're just, it's the logistics of the fact that it's not city property, it is DOT property, and just navigating like hurdles we never would have guessed when we were putting together the proposals. And like I said, just trying to be as adaptive as possible to try and figure out this, like eyes on the prize. We're going to get there somehow.
Well, and in New York State, we face a boatload of barriers, right? And anybody that's traveled to states like Colorado or Oregon knows how easily parks just kind of appear out of nowhere there, right? But in New York, we have so much red tape that it's always something upon something that we're facing.
So we have a couple comments in the chat. Brandon said, to touch on what Steve was saying, the skate park in Plymouth, New Hampshire has concrete walls just outside of the skate park that encourage graffiti or street art. And doesn't eliminate all graffiti in the skate park, but it helps. And Danielle had asked for the panel to talk a little bit more about the intersection of skate parks and public art, which I think we're starting to, have a bit of that now. But I think that it's important that we're having this conversation. So thank you.
One thing, and it's not necessarily about public art, but I just remember like on grand opening day, I ended up like, as you're going around and we're about to open up the park for all, like literally like the throngs of skaters who were like at the fence, like zombies at the heart, like just let us in. But I ended up next to the mayor, and I was like, hey, thank you, blah, blah, whatever. And she's like, I didn't understand what we were building until I'm in it. And this is, and she's like, I get it now. I understand it. I just understand it. And so this is, while it's not about public art, it's about like that process of getting the parks built, and getting the key stakeholders you have to convince, i.e. the city, to like, get through this. Like, this is what I think a skate park is. And show them, like, I know some folks went to the Boston Park, and I can't remember the name of it, but the one under the bridge, because it was kind of similar challenges. Lynch family one, yeah. So it was like similar challenges to what we were facing. And while the folks who went on that trip got it, like, oh, this is what we're trying to build, that's still not the mayor. That's still not these other folks. And like, it's a little bit that seeing is believing, like figuring out ways to, if you can get a key stakeholder you're working with, who may be the gatekeeper, to set foot in what you're trying to build, and I think now it's not necessarily easier, but I think there's more examples that are like, we're talking large about New York State stuff, but I think if you look at all over the country, like there's more and more examples of these popping up. And once you can like have a thing to point to and say, this is what we're trying to build, like, forget what you think, forget the horrible movies, forget what, the PSAs that are just trash, like, get into, like, this is what it could be. This is the potential. Like, if you figure out that stuff, I mean, like, in that moment, I was like, that was, her in that park looking at it going, we have to prioritize finishing the build of this park. And again, much as we talked about like the skaters' ownership of that process and getting it, and this is our park, like getting the people that are paying for it to also be like, oh, I get it, I see the potential, we got to finish it, and it's their idea now too, and that's also like an ego thing, like like where you as the advocate, you know, you're biting your tongue as much as you're talking with it, you know, like to be like, oh God, this is killing us. But, you know, like getting it so that the idea, like those stakeholders, like, oh, this was our idea. And you're like, you know what? Don't care, it's built. Like, and kind of removing yourself from like, I know
Everyone's claiming responsibility after it's successful.
And like I said, it's I mean, that goes whether it's a skate park or literally anything along the process that you're trying to get accomplished, like being able to kind of remove yourself and your own ego from that, to be like, I just don't care. I want this thing. Like, it's like, do you want the ego and the acclaim, or do you want to get the thing done? And that's a hard conversation with yourself, or like be it anything in life really. But sometimes that's the make or break that gets the thing done.
Yeah. I think like as far as the graffiti and connection to the skateboarding community and the art, specifically in Ithaca, is that we had what's it called? Squash ball, right? You hit the ball at the we had
a pickleball, maybe.
Yeah, you throw it at a big wall. They had a big concrete wall put in at the same park where the skate park is by the same contractors, so people could play that. And they actually hired local artists to do graffiti on that, which actually opened more of Ithaca up, Ithaca has always been pretty supportive of their artistic community. Which I guess I had never really had that struggle, I guess. But it did open it up even more. So now under the bridges on like a main highway down by the commons, they have beautiful pictures that they put up. They're hiring these artists to do anything, even down in like the industrial area. There's the coolest Yoda I've ever seen in my entire life. But it's incredible how much they've started to incorporate that into Ithaca. And it's just like, sometimes they have a phrase for it and they say it's like 10 square miles surrounded by reality. And sometimes I think that that's slightly true, just because I lived in that environment, and it was, as an artist, it's much easier in that area. That's for sure.
Steve, I know that graffiti is really kind of coming back to New York, almost like it was in the 80s. I mean, maybe not like that, but it is certainly making a comeback. Like, have you noticed an increase in graffiti at skate parks there?
Only at the parks where there's always been graffiti.
Okay.
Like LES. Crazy. It's completely covered. Yeah, I think COVID, definitely during COVID, graffiti, because so many stores closed, so much less, because in New York City, there's a zero tolerance policy with graffiti.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you can't, I've had these discussions a million times. It's like, I feel like it's never going to happen. But yeah, I do feel like there has been an increase in graffiti at the parks where there always was graffiti. And it's usually the more popular parks.
Right.
Definitely.
You were involved with like the Barbara Kruger installation at LES, right?
Yep.
Can you talk about like how that went down? Like as far as like, and it doesn't like long, but just like
basically there's a nonprofit public art foundation called Performa, and they wanted to do something with Barbara Kruger. They had me meet with her, and then kind of like, oh, let's do a collab. And I'm like, okay, well, why don't you do it at this place where it's very highly visible, there's huge space, it has that huge back fence, because most skate parks have fences around them. So it's actually the perfect marriage of, doing something huge like her artwork is, like these big installations, and the skate park. We wrapped the entire skate park, all the vertical surfaces, and that back wall. And it was up for about, I think, a month, 3 to 4 weeks. And it was a huge success because it brought a lot of people down to that area that, normally wouldn't be in a skate park or normally wouldn't be in that area. So that's just another good way to activate skate parks you know, because there are these massive fences around them. Some parks don't, like Astoria didn't have to have a fence. I fought against that. But a place like LES has to have a fence. It's all different.
Yeah.
So, but that is, the Barbara Kruger thing was kind of a stroke of luck, but it's definitely thinking outside the box. We're like, oh, who can I convince to activate at a skate park location, and how can I get other people involved? And as you guys know, I got Volcom involved and some other brands involved that paid a lot of money to be involved. You know what I mean? And that helps support this nonprofit art foundation. It helps support the skate park. Like, in so many ways, everybody won, you know. And I got to work with Barbara Kruger, so that's awesome.
Which is sick. Yeah.
All right. I think we're going to start to close out unless anybody has anything final in the chat. And then we'll take one last comment from the audience. Nothing in the chat? Okay. So we have one audience comment or question. Hi.
My name is Beth. I'm from 10 miles east of here in Schuylerville, and we're trying to get a skate park started. It's a whole giant scope of different things, like an ice rink, splash pad, riverfront revitalization, but the skate park part of it is kind of my thing. When I heard you guys talk about the timeline, it was like approximately, I mean, one person said 10 years, you know, and I know it's not like, you know, tomorrow this is going to happen, or even next year, or maybe the year after, but can you talk to me a little bit about your processes? I mean, obviously you've got a committee. You have to work through your village or town, city, and then fundraising, but can you talk to me about those steps a little bit, and maybe if you have any kind of great advice that I must have missed. I've talked to Charlie Samuels, I've talked with the Tony Hawk Foundation, with Alec, so I've been trying to dig as much as I can, but anything that might help me with this process.
So the question is about there's a local community member from a nearby town who is working towards getting a skate park in that town, and has questions about kind of the overall process, the timing, et cetera. Before I let my panelists answer, I will just say that Alec Beck at the Skate Park Project is fantastic.
He's awesome.
He is. Keep in touch with him. That's my advice, and I'm going to let you guys take it away.
Just add one thing. So Steve also just put a resource on the chat that is publicskateparkguide.org. And so when I take the recording, put it online and everything, if anybody wants to either email or wants a copy of this, I'm happy to do that. But publicskateparkguide.org is a good start.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'll let you guys comment.
I think what it comes down to in the end is how much of a finished product you can give the town in order for them to essentially have to do the least amount of work. I think that's, if I had to put it in a nutshell, that's kind of what, like, for example, Ithaca, the experience that we had is going to be much different because you had hurdles with the DOT, which that's the other thing. Is going to be what types of hurdles you're going to encounter, and preparing yourself for those types of things. Like if you're near a local water source, what would that be something included with like the Department of Agriculture or something like that? I don't know, but that would be something to maybe look into and do some research on. Like the space that you're at specifically, if you're under a bridge, But I think it's all about really getting into the details of where you're located, what you're trying to put there, and fundraising and all of that extra other stuff too.
And it actually, what you were saying actually reminded me of like, ultimately the final push that got it built was $50 million that went to the city for this thing called Rock the Riverway project, about revitalizing what was going on along, like we've got the river right downtown Rochester with the waterfalls and stuff.
Oh, cool.
And the skate park, through basically we had a couple people advocating for us on that committee who were like, build a skate park. and we somehow got $1 million. And that ultimately was what pushed us over, because had that not happened, and it's been so many things over the last 12 years that it was like, how did I forget how we actually got it? But as you said, if it's part of like an overall revitalization project, like I said, riding coattails is not a bad thing to help speeding that process. But I think like all the stuff that Scott was saying, like if you can pre-visualize the project and look, get buy-in from local businesses that would be impacted, right? Like and doing that little bit of work of like figuring out what their preconceptions are versus like, all right, we got to like battle that preconception, and kind of having those ideas like be ready. Like again, it's a different process now than it is, I think, a decade ago, but we had to figure out like, all right, here's all the arguments against it. So we're going to here's all our counter arguments to get through that. And community partners figuring out that stuff. One thing I would say, I mean, unless you are Steve, the mayor of New York City, and able to just like do amazing stuff, it's having more than having a group of people and playing off each other's strengths. We have a crew. I mean, it started with 5 people. It got as many as 22 people. And now we've kind of settled like our board's about 10 or 11 people who all bring different strengths to the team. Because if you were trying to do it all by yourself, you will totally get burnt out potentially in that thing. But also those people like bring different connections, different ideas, and like one of those people eventually will open a door that you didn't even think about. Along the times like having those conversations. And then there's so many resources out there to like kind of pull from. Don't reinvent the wheel. Like at this point, I think it's looking look at skate parks in towns that are similar in size and structure and makeup to your town, and talk to the people that got that built. I know we're now flipping in that, and we're now able to be more of those people for other people. Like in Rochester, I'm sure like we're here all now. Like it's like, hey, these are our experiences and what's going on. But trying to figuring out what locations are similar to what you're trying to do. What are the challenges they went through? Because you will think you have guessed everything possible, and the one thing that you didn't think about is what's going to keep you, it's going to stop it for the next 2 years. So
something like drainage.
I mean, a great example. They're like, we'll put under, like for us, it's like, we'll build under the bridge and we can go down and like build down into the ground underneath to give it some height. And when they started doing their surveys, the whole ground was a mess because it's all construction waste stuff. Locally Spectrum ran their fiber lines too shallow, so we couldn't dig down, or we'd cut fiber to the city. And that abatement of the ground cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars that could have built a skate park, like that could have built concrete rideable. So in that, like, figuring out what are the problems with the location. Are you set on that location? Is there maybe something that's, that isn't going to give you as many headaches, even if it's 50 feet down or another side of the city? Like,
I know that the park
ask questions, I guess.
The park that Ithaca was in was really well known for flooding. That was a really common thing. So
let's put a skate park there.
Yeah. So they were like, you guys can have your skate park over here in the flooded park that no one goes to, it would flood quite often. So a big thing that they did when we made the addition to the current skate park that was already there was we asked them to put in proper drainage. That was a big thing. Just thinking of like, look at that spot year round and see maybe what type of things it's going to endure as far as weather and stuff like that.
And don't focus on just the area you're thinking to build. absolutely look at what else. Like when we started the project, it was the entrance to our abandoned subway. And then like right as we're about to start digging, a giant luxury condo goes up. And now potential noise complaints. It's going to be loud, whatever. Now, given this is one of the quietest parks I've ever been into, and we're right next to a river, and you're right next to Dinosaur Barbecue, which is a giant biker bar. So it's like, are you really worried about some wheels, wheels and cement? But that's the battle that you're dealing with.
As many questions as you can get from people.
Yeah.
To counter anything.
Yeah, and just to think about
really
like.
Helps.
Yeah, and when the complaints or the naysayers come at you, my whole thing is like, all right, what is the crux of what that issue is? What are they worried about? Are they worried about a misconception? Or is there a nugget of truth, or is there a potential issue, like that draining or whatever noise? Like we had a big thing where there's the Genesee Riverwalk path that goes by there. It's a big walking path, and it was already down for like a year because of construction on under the bridge for other stuff. And like the people who walk are just like, angry. Oh my God, so angry. And so like a giant, really nice walkway is on the edge of that park, and it kind of goes around to like some support poles, so they can either go totally away from it to go to the river, or kind of go right along the edge of the park. But that was, it's a legit concern. It's a bikeway, it's a walkway. It's a place, as people are trying to use that, especially as they're trying to activate spaces along the Genesee. I'm like, okay, like you may be annoying, but you have a point. Like, all right, so how can we deal with this and integrate it so that everyone wins? Because it's possible. It just may be hard.
It's the first key is to not immediately get offended. Like,
Yeah,
don't get
it's
defensive.
hard. It's hard
so
when
hard.
you have
It's
a
so
decade of
hard.
hate thrown at you. But
You just got to keep that shining light moving on.
Yeah. But and also having said that, like we're talking about like decades long projects, like you are benefiting from either starting, however you're starting, whether it's you started this year, last, or whatever. Like you're starting a skate park project in 2021 in the year that skateboarding is in the Olympics, and is everywhere in the media. There's TV shows centered around skate life that aren't bad, like that actually have good writing or whatever. And I think the representation and a lot of the prejudices that we dealt with starting a decade ago, you don't have to work. You won't have to deal with at the same level. And now it's seen as definitely like potential positive thing for a community. So that helps. Like, so don't worry about the decade, but be ready for the decade. Steve, anything else?
Yeah, what was the specific question again? Sorry. Okay.
The question was basically kind of a general question about the trajectory of, soup to nuts getting a park built in terms of timing, in terms of resources, in terms of kind of how do you do this thing?
Yeah, so I'd say like just mirroring a lot of what these guys said, there are some parks like LES Park was built in 3 months, right? But Alexander Hamilton took 13 years. So it's really the more support you can get, like these guys said, try and find a location that nobody wants and nobody uses.
Yeah.
And,
but also find out why.
Like a flooded park.
A lot of it, but I'd say a lot of it is a lot of the spaces that I've been able to have turned into skate parks in New York City have been things that, places that people just don't use, handball courts that are hard to access. You know what I mean? It's really like skateboarders usually hang out at the unused spaces anyway when it's not a park. So that's okay because they'll go out of their way, and then they actually end up gentrifying and transforming that space. And then later, this is a desirable location. So you have to really do your homework. I'm helping Hastings, New York, with their skate park. One of my good friends who lives there, he is working with a group of about 10 people, 10 parents who all used to skate and have kids that skate, and they want a skate park. And they're just being super diligent about doing it. They've asked the city, where could this possibly be? They looked at all those locations. They did kind of like a survey to figure out like, okay, these are the 3 locations which would cause the least amount of pushback because of X, Y, and Z. And yeah, no one wants it in, the NIMBY thing, not in my backyard. So that, as far as raising money, they've actually already raised more than half of the money they need for the skate park. But because they're doing this just realistically, they're doing it organized and with a purpose, so just mirroring a lot of what these guys said. You just really need to realize first, it's definitely going to be a challenge. It's definitely going to be difficult. But if you are organized and you take it little by little, it's something that could happen soon. It could happen, I would say the quickest turnaround realistically, depending on where you live, it could be done in 2 years, as quick as that. But to me, based on seasonally, when construction's done, stuff like that, 2 years I'd say would be the soonest. And it could be forever.
Yeah. I also want to, give props, like another solution was probably not what you want to do, but for maybe other people out there is just south of Rochester, still kind of Rochester's called, but there's the Honey Falls DIY project. And what that was a bunch of skaters got together, and it was like a really bad park. It was like a pad, prefab ramps, just trash. And I don't remember if they just straight up built and like, we're just going to go and build stuff, or if they maybe asked someone at the town, but it's kind of like a abandoned thing. And I want to say that they did what ultimately ends up being a proof of concept. Like they built just like a little quarter, and it built a little thing, and then people started going there more. And then they ended up having conversations with Honey Falls, like the little town, and they ended up just giving them carte blanche to build this DIY park. And then, some of those guys, like they do their own fundraising and people chip in, and I don't know if they're sponsored by Satcrete or something. They're always thinking Satcrete, but they think they have a connection there to get concrete maybe discounted or something. But like they literally just have a mixer there, and they get people who they're like, all right, it's a build day this Saturday. We're going to have a barbecue and you're going to build. And no one's riding today. We're just going to build stuff. And it's so cool because it's so grassroots, organic, like going to that DIY thing, but it's like sanctioned DIY. Which is rad. That means it's not going away. It's going to be there. And it's a very different approach to, I think, the process that we're all really dealing with. But that's more to like, maybe anyone else in here found a flat spot, start building. And you never know. You never know. Like you never know how it could be received. Like it is, ask forgiveness, not permission sometimes. Weigh it. But you never know what's going to happen. Like this was a really cool best case scenario that's been going on and is still going.
If I can add to, Benj and I have been doing this for now almost 9 years.
9 years.
And it
Upside
started
down,
with, them trying to build a skate park for the city, and then the city having a conversation, us building a relationship, continuing relationships, getting money, having this all happen with COVID, getting the money taken back from us, now maybe getting the money back. So you just have to be as patient and read as much as possible. Continue to have conversations like this, continue to get the community involved. And there are going to be points where you're not going to relate to the skaters, or maybe the skaters don't relate to you. So you have to make sure that the skaters get in front of those people you're talking to. And I think that's super important so that they understand that there is a relatability there, and there is a responsibility, but there's also the choice of having these young people own some of this opportunity that they can have, and that they can then pass on to the next generation. And with Schuylerville, if you have a good relationship with what's going on there, you have a ton, it's a large space, right? So if that one space doesn't work, like everyone said,
Yeah. And like to what Belinda was saying, and kind of like to any younger folks in there, like get involved. Like this is for you. Like, you know, you, like I said, we started a decade ago and now we're like almost too old to skate the damn park. But you know, like we've always tried to make sure that they like the up and coming younger skaters like had a voice so that they want to go to it. Like they want to see it. They want to be part of it. Like, even if one design element makes it into that park, and like I said, some of the stuff is totally out of our control, you know, in that process, or, you know, maybe like that, but it's like, man, you get one element that gets in there, like you're so hyped on that. Like that is like, that's my idea. We made it, it's there. And again, it's that ownership level. And again, not knowing like what your background is, it's like the worst thing I think from a skater's perspective is like, here you go. Here's all your effort. This is what you get. You know, like that. And like, and it could be, as Steve said, like the horrible, don't do prefab parks. Like, please don't do prefab parks. Don't do like, just avoid it. Like concrete, even in upstate, you know, upstate central Western New York, like it's worth it to do that. It's going to be a better long-term thing. It's going to last longer. Like wood, skate light, all that stuff is not built for our weather. Like
attract more attention to, yeah.
Well, and it's louder too, yeah, because noise is always an issue and always a worry and complaint. But yeah, the concrete can just be so freaking quiet and just longer lasting and a better investment. It's safer, things like that. So
we're gonna wrap things up now, and before we go, I just want to mention that we are currently fundraising for our own park here in Saratoga for the construction costs. So in the chat will be our website, which is www.ondecksaratoga.org. We will also post our Venmo in there, which is @OnDeckSaratoga. So if anybody wants to donate even just a little bit, that would be awesome. Of course, you don't have to. This is going to be an ongoing effort until we can raise the funds to support a fully concrete park here in Saratoga Springs. I want to thank my awesome panelists. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Scott. Thanks, Eric. Thanks to all our audience members here in person and virtually. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to myself and Belinda. Our email address is ondecksaratoga@gmail.com. And thanks all, and hope you guys have a great night. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Later, guys.
Thank you.
See you, Steve.
Later, guys.
Thank you, Steve.
Pleasure.
I also have stickers if anyone here wants them.
I'll take a
Everyone loves stickers.